It started on a day that felt heavier than usual, the kind of day when the air itself seems to press down on the shoulders. The person in this story had grown used to stressful mornings, but this one felt different. They woke up tired even though they had slept for hours. Their mind felt cloudy, like it was already full before the day even began. There was no time for breakfast, no quiet moment to breathe. Instead, there was only the rush to get ready and the tense walk to the bus stop, where the same loud city noises greeted them on the way to work. Their thoughts kept jumping between unfinished tasks, upcoming deadlines, and the pressure to stay calm when everything felt overwhelming. The bus ride was packed, and the constant noise added to the tightness building in their chest. They stared out the window, watching people outside move quickly, each person rushing through their own busy routine. Somehow, seeing others move so fast made the person feel even more behind in life. When they arrived at the office, the environment looked familiar, but didn't feel comforting. The bright lights, the sound of keyboards, the ringing phones, and the non-stop conversations made the stress rise even more. A stack of tasks was already waiting for them. A coworker quickly reminded them of a deadline. Another asked a question before they could even sit down. Their heart beat a little faster, and their breathing felt shallow. They tried to focus, but their mind kept wandering. Every small mistake felt like a big failure. Every email notification made them tense up. They kept telling themselves to relax, to take things slowly, but nothing worked. Hours passed, yet the work seemed never-ending. By lunchtime, they were already drained, but even the break did not bring peace. Their thoughts kept spinning, and the stress continued to build. When the workday finally ended, the sky outside was already turning dark. They felt too tired to talk to anyone, too drained to think about dinner, and too overwhelmed to even enjoy the quiet walk back to the bus stop. They sat by the window again, their head resting against the cold glass, wishing the world would slow down just a little. When they got home, they dropped their bag on the floor and sank into the couch. The room was silent, but their mind wasn't. Thoughts kept echoing, blending into the same cycle of worry and pressure. They reached for their phone out of habit, not looking for anything in particular, just something to distract them. Their finger tapped through different apps without purpose until a random video appeared. It had a simple title and a thumbnail that showed soft colors and gentle light. They clicked on it without thinking. The moment the music started, something unexpected happened. The first notes were soft, clear, and almost glowing. It felt like a small wave of calm washing through the noise in their mind. The melody sounded light, almost playful, yet peaceful at the same time. They didn't know who composed it or what it was called, but the feeling was warm, like someone gently placing a hand on their shoulder, telling them it was okay to breathe. For a moment, the person forgot about work, deadlines, and worries. They just sat there in the quiet room listening. The music felt clean, as if it could sweep away the stress that had settled in their chests throughout the day. They closed their eyes, letting the sound settle into every corner of their mind. Something inside them softened. They didn't feel completely relaxed yet, but they felt a little lighter. That small shift felt important. It felt like the first time in weeks that their thoughts slowed down. They listened to the end of the piece, then looked at the screen again. The playlist said it was classical music. They had heard classical music before, of course, but they never paid attention to it. Tonight, though, the music felt different. It felt like the kind of calm they had been desperately needing. Curious, they pressed the next video. The melody that followed was graceful and bright. It made the room feel softer, almost as if the air had changed. They leaned back on the couch, letting the stress slide out of their muscles little by little. Their heartbeat, which had been fast all day, began to slow. The music had no words, but it felt like it was speaking to them. It told them that not everything needed to be rushed. It showed them that peace could still be found even after the longest, hardest days. They didn't realize how much time had passed. The playlist kept going, and each piece felt like a new breath. They sat still for the first time that day, truly still, without thinking about what they had to do next or what could go wrong tomorrow. The quiet inside their mind felt unfamiliar but comforting when they finally stood up to get a glass of water. It felt slightly steadier. The tension in their shoulders had loosened. The heaviness in their chest had lightened. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't crushing them anymore either. That night, instead of struggling to fall asleep, they let the music play softly beside them. The gentle notes became a blanket of sound, wrapping them in calm. The usual cycle of thoughts didn't spin as loudly. Instead, they drifted off slowly, peacefully. The next morning, they woke up earlier than usual. The stress wasn't gone, but something small inside them felt different. They remembered the music from the night before and felt a tiny spark of curiosity. Without much thought, they opened the same playlist again. The first piece that played had a light rhythm that made their morning routine feel a little smoother as they got ready. They noticed they were moving slower, not in a lazy way, but in a calm way. They brushed their hair gently, tied their shoes without rushing, and even had time to take a few deep breaths before leaving for work. During the bus ride, the music continued to play through their earphones. The morning sun, the passing streets, and the soft melody blended together in a peaceful rhythm. For the first time in a long while, they felt present. They watched the world outside without feeling the usual panic inside. When they reached the office, the day still brought challenges, mails, tasks, responsibilities, but the music had given them a smoother start. They felt slightly more prepared, a little less on edge. The stress didn't hit them as hard as it usually did. They found themselves breathing more evenly, pausing for a moment whenever things felt too much. By lunchtime, they remembered how yesterday had felt mentally exhausted, emotionally drained. Today, while still tired, they didn't feel crushed. They played another piece of music quietly while eating alone. The melody gave them a small break from the noise around them. Throughout the afternoon, whenever their minds started spinning too fast, they took a short pause and replayed the calm notes in their head. It didn't solve everything, but it helped them stay balanced. After work, they went home with the same playlist ready. They didn't know exactly why the music helped, but they didn't question it. They just knew it made the long, stressful days feel a little more bearable. That evening, they prepared a simple meal and kept the music playing in the background. The room no longer felt heavy and silent like the night before. Instead, it felt warm and safe. They finally allowed themselves to sit back and breathe as they listened. A thought came to them. Maybe calm wasn't something that needed to be chased all at once. Maybe it was something that could be built slowly, one small moment at a time. Maybe this music could become part of their routine, something steady to hold on to on difficult days. They didn't know how long this habit would last, or how much it would change their life. But they knew one thing. It had given them a moment of peace when they needed it the most. And sometimes, a single moment is enough to start a new path. That night, before sleeping, they let the gentle melody of classical music fill the room again. The soft notes traveled through the quiet space, calming their heartbeat and relaxing their mind. As they closed their eyes, they felt something they had not felt in a long while, a sense of hope. It was a small beginning, but it was the first step toward a calmer life, one peaceful note at a time. The next few days moved quietly, almost without the person noticing the small shifts happening inside them. What began as a simple moment of calm with music slowly became something steady, something they began to look forward to without even thinking about it. Each morning before leaving home, they pressed play on the same playlist that had helped them breathe easier that first night. The soft notes filled the room as they prepared for the day, and it felt like a gentle reminder that they didn't have to face everything alone. One morning, while sipping warm tea, a new piece began to play. It had a bright, cheerful rhythm that felt light on the ears, almost playful. The melody danced gently, bringing an unexpected smile to their face. They didn't know the composer's name yet, but something about the music felt familiar, like it was speaking to a quieter part of who they were. Later, while on the bus heading to work, they searched the playlist and found the name listed: Mozart. They didn't know much about him, but they liked the feel of his music. It reminded them that not everything in life had to be heavy. Some things could simply be warm, soft, and comforting. The music made the ride feel shorter. Instead of staring tiredly out the window or counting the minutes, they found themselves absorbing every note. That morning at work began the way every morning usually did: emails waiting, people rushing, tasks piling up. but the person felt a little more centered. Whenever anxiety tried to sneak in, they remembered the melody from the bus ride. That bright sound stayed with them, like a small lamp in a dark hallway. During their break, they searched for more Mozart pieces. Each one carried a different shade of calm, some light and playful, others smooth and thoughtful. They put on earphones and listened while eating lunch. The cafeteria around them buzzed with noise. But the music made it easier to stay focused on their own thoughts. For the first time in weeks, they ate without rushing. They didn't check their phone every few seconds. They simply sat there, breathing slowly, taking in the food and the melody together. That quiet meal felt like a small gift. After work, when they returned home, the exhaustion was still there, but not as overwhelming. They prepared a simple dinner while keeping the playlist playing in the background. The soft music made the kitchen feel warm. It somehow made even small tasks feel meaningful. That evening, they read more about Mozart online. They learned he composed many pieces in his short life, each carrying its own story. They didn't get too deep into details. They weren't studying music. But reading about someone who created beauty even during hard times gave them a strange sense of comfort. The next morning, they woke up early again. They opened the window to let fresh air in. The sky was still a bit dark, but the city was beginning to wake. They pressed play on the playlist, and Mozart filled the room once more. As the notes floated gently through the air, the person took slow breaths, letting the morning pass through them peacefully. That day at work, something small but important happened. While finishing a task that usually made them anxious, they caught themselves humming one of the Mozart melodies. They weren't even aware of it at first. A coworker nearby glanced over with a light smile, and the person felt a bit shy, but also unexpectedly happy. Throughout the week, Mozart became part of their routine. In the mornings, it woke them gently. On the bus, it calmed their heartbeat. During lunch, it helped them slow down. In the evenings, it softened the atmosphere at home. There was one evening in particular when the person felt the impact deeply. They came home after a long day where everything seemed to go wrong: miscommunication, pressure, technical issues, and misunderstandings. Normally, a day like that would have left them sitting in silence with a heavy mind. But that night, instead of sinking into worry, they lay on the couch and played a long Mozart piece. The opening notes were soft, slow, and calming. As the music grew, it carried a gentle rhythm that felt like someone reassuring them through sound. They closed their eyes and let the music fill the tired spaces inside them. They didn't think about work or mistakes or upcoming deadlines. They simply listened. At one point, they even felt tears form, not from sadness but from release. The stress that had built up inside them slowly softened. Each note felt like a breath, and each breath felt like a small healing. The person realized something important in that moment. The music wasn't just helping them relax. It was giving them space to feel, to breathe, to slow down. It was giving them room to be human again. The next day, they walked to the bus stop with a lighter step. Their body was still tired, but their mind didn't carry the same weight. When they took their seat, they put in their earphones and hit play. The music began, and the world outside the window seemed less chaotic, less rushed. They remembered reading somewhere that Mozart's music was known for helping focus and reducing stress. At first, it sounded like a random fact, but now it made sense. There was something balanced and peaceful in the sound, something almost natural. One weekend morning, when they had nowhere to be, the person brewed tea and sat by the window. They let the sunlight fall across their legs and listened to a full Mozart playlist, piece after piece. They didn't check the time. They didn't check notifications. They simply allowed the day to unfold slowly. That quiet morning became one of their favorite new memories as days turned into weeks. The person felt more in control of their emotions. The stress from work didn't disappear, but it didn't own them anymore. When things got too loud, they turned to the music. When their thoughts became scattered, they let Mozart guide them back to calm. One late afternoon, while walking home from the bus stop, they realized how different they felt. Their shoulders weren't as tense. Their breathing was deeper. Their mind wasn't constantly racing. They were still the same person with the same responsibilities. but something inside them had softened. They stopped at a small bench near a park and sat for a moment, watching the leaves move gently in the wind. They pulled out their phone, opened their playlist, and let Mozart play softly in the background. The music blended with the sounds of nature, creating a peaceful scene that they wished they could stay in forever. As the melody flowed, they thought about how simple things could bring comfort: fresh air, quiet moments, warm tea, calm music. Life's problems didn't disappear, but these small moments gave them strength. Around this time, they began sharing the playlist with a coworker who also seemed stressed. The coworker listened one day, then returned the next morning with a grateful smile, saying the music helped them relax before bed. The person felt warm hearing that. It felt good to know the comfort they discovered could help someone else too. Slowly, Mozart became more than just background sound. It became part of the person's emotional support, like a gentle companion they could rely on. When they felt overwhelmed, the music reminded them to breathe. When they felt discouraged, the melodies lifted their spirits. One evening, after finishing dinner, the person lay on their bed with the lights dimmed. They played a Mozart piece they had started recognizing by sound alone. The soft piano notes drifted through the room, creating a blanket of peace. They closed their eyes and let each sound settle like a soft sigh. As the piece continued, they reflected on the past few weeks. Stress had once controlled every part of their day. It had taken away their sleep, their clarity, their joy. But now the fog in their mind was thinner. They could see their life with more clarity. They could feel calm returning, piece by piece. They didn't know exactly where this journey with music would lead, but they knew it was doing something good, something gentle, something steady, and deep down, they felt grateful. Grateful for the random video they clicked that evening. Grateful for the melodies that carried them through tiring days. Grateful for the reminder that peace doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in soft notes, in small moments. In music created centuries ago, as they drifted into sleep, Mozart played softly in the background, guiding them into a calm night. It was the second step on their journey, a journey toward healing, balance, and a quieter mind. The weeks passed quietly, and with every passing day, the person felt a little more stable. Mozart had become a soft companion through stressful mornings and long evenings. But soon, they began searching for something deeper, something steady enough to guide them on days when their mind felt scattered again. Even with the small piece they had found, life still carried its own weight. Work brought new responsibilities that were heavier than before. Their mind, though calmer, sometimes slipped back into patterns of worry. One night, after a long day filled with unexpected tasks, they sat down on the couch and opened the playlist again. This time, another name caught their eye batch. They had heard the name before, but something about it felt distant, almost too classical or serious for their taste. Still, curiosity pushed them to click on one of the pieces. The sound that followed surprised them. It wasn't loud or emotional. Instead, it felt organized and balanced, almost like the music was arranging their thoughts for them. The notes moved with a steady rhythm, not rushed, not too slow, just enough to bring a sense of order. As the music continued, they felt something shift inside. Their breathing slowed. Their shoulders softened. The clutter in their minds seemed to quiet down. It felt like someone gently putting scattered papers into neat piles. Clearing the desk inside their head, they leaned back, letting the sound fill the room. The day had been overwhelming, but now the tightness in their chest was loosening. This music felt different from Mozart. It wasn't playful or bright. It was warm in a structured way, like a steady hand leading them through a maze. The person let the piece play to the end before starting another one. This one felt fuller, deeper, like it carried a quiet strength. And for the first time in days, they felt grounded. The next morning, they returned to the same batch playlist. As they got ready for work, the steady notes helped them move slowly but surely. There was no rush in their steps, just a steady rhythm that matched the music. On the bus, they watched the city move past the window. Normally, the sounds of honking cars, rushing footsteps, and loud conversations would add to their stress. But with batch playing in their ears, everything felt muted, like the world was moving in the background while they stayed centered. That day at work, a big project was assigned to them. The kind that required long hours, careful planning, and constant focus. Normally, hearing that would make their stomach twist. But instead of panicking, they took a deep breath and let the steady rhythm of Bach guide them. They opened the project file, put on their earphones, and began working. For the first time in a long while, they didn't rush. They didn't jump from one task to another. They focused, one step at a time, letting the music help them stay steady. Hours passed without them noticing. They got more work done in one afternoon than they had in the entire previous week. They were surprised by their own productivity, but even more surprised by their calm when the day ended. They walked out of the office with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Not pride, not excitement, just calm confidence. It felt good. That evening, when they got home, they cooked a small meal and put Bach on in the background. The steady flow of music made the kitchen feel peaceful. As they ate dinner, they felt grateful for this small discovery. The next several days were similar. Whenever stress built up, they turned to Bach. Whenever their thoughts scattered, the music gathered them back together. Whenever the workload grew heavier, the steady rhythm reminded them to take things one step at a time. One Saturday morning, when the sky was cloudy and the air smelled of rain, the person sat near the window with a warm blanket over their legs. They played a long Bach piece and watched raindrops slide down the glass. The steady pattern of the rain matched the music, creating a peaceful atmosphere. As they sat there, they thought about how their life had changed. Not the big things, those were still the same. They still had responsibilities, deadlines, and long days. But their inner world had shifted. They were learning how to stay steady, how to breathe through stress, how to return to calm. That afternoon, while cleaning their room, they found an old journal tucked under a pile of books. They hadn't written in it for months. Curious, they opened it and saw the last entry. It was full of stress, confusion, and frustration. The words felt heavy. Reading it made them realize how far they had come. They were not completely free from stress, but the constant tension that once lived inside them had eased. They picked up a pen and wrote a new entry. This time, the words were different. They wrote about how music had given them a way to breathe again. How Bach had become a steady voice reminding them that even chaotic days could be handled with calm. They wrote about wanting to continue this journey toward peace. After writing, they put the journal away carefully. It felt like a small reminder that they were growing. Slowly but surely, one day at a time. A week later, something unexpected happened at work. A sudden change in the project created confusion among the team. People were stressed, talking quickly, pacing around, trying to figure out what to do. The person felt their heartbeat rise for a moment, but then they remembered the steady rhythm of Bach. They took a slow breath, put on their earphones, and focused. While others rushed, they stayed calm. They took notes, made a simple plan, and slowly helped the team understand what needed to be done. Their calmness became contagious. One coworker even asked how they managed to stay so composed. The person simply smiled and said they were just taking things slowly. That evening, as they walked home with the sun setting behind the buildings, they felt something warm inside, a sense of quiet strength. They weren't perfect. They still had worries, but they were learning how to manage them. When they got home, they opened the window and let the cool evening breeze drift into the room. They put on another Bach piece and sat quietly, letting the music fill the space. Each note felt like it was telling them, "You're doing okay. Keep going." One night, after a particularly long day, they lay in bed listening to a slower Bach piece. The music felt like a soft guide, helping them unwind. As they closed their eyes, they felt grateful for the balance and structure the music brought into their life. A sense of clarity grew inside them. They realized that stress would always be part of life, but calm could be part of it too. And Bach had become a bridge between the two. Another afternoon. While walking home from the bus stop, they passed by a small bookstore. Feeling drawn to it, they stepped inside. Soft music played through a speaker in the corner. They walked slowly through the aisles, touching the spines of books and breathing in the warm scent of paper. On a small wooden shelf, they noticed a book about classical music. The title mentioned Bach. It felt like a quiet sign. They picked it up and flipped through the pages. The book talked about how Bach's music was structured, balanced, and known to bring focus and peace, reading that made them smile. They bought the book and carried it home. That night, they read a few pages with Bach playing softly in the background. The words in the book and the music around them blended into a peaceful harmony. Days continued to flow, some smooth, some challenging. But the person no longer felt crushed by stress. They had developed a new habit: pausing, breathing, listening. The small breaks they took with Bach helped them stay aligned with themselves. One Sunday afternoon, they decided to clean their apartment. With Bach playing in the background, the task felt lighter. They folded clothes, dusted shelves, and arranged things neatly. The music made them move calmly, not rushing, not stressing, just moving with balance. Later that evening, they sat on the balcony with a warm drink in their hands. The sky was painted orange and pink. They let Bach play softly, watching the colors change. The moment felt peaceful, like everything around them had slowed down. They thought about their journey, how it began with overwhelming pressure. Then a random click on a music video, then Mozart bringing small moments of calm. And now Bach giving them structure and stability. It wasn't a dramatic change. It was a quiet one. But sometimes the quietest changes are the strongest. As the evening grew darker, they closed their eyes and whispered to themselves that they were proud of how far they'd come. Not because they had solved all their problems, but because they had learned how to stay steady even when life felt chaotic. With Bach playing softly, they felt ready for whatever the next part of their journey would bring. They knew more challenges would come, but they also knew they had found something that grounded them deeply. And so, with the calm notes filling the night, they took another step forward, one steady moment at a time. The next morning felt strangely calm, as if the whole town had decided to breathe a little slower. Even the birds outside the small apartment window seemed quieter. After everything that had happened the previous day, she woke up feeling both tired and hopeful. It was the kind of feeling that tells you life is about to change, but you're not sure how. She sat up slowly, stretched her arms, and let the soft morning light warm her face. For the first time in a while, she didn't feel that heavy pressure in her chest. Maybe it was because she finally shared her fears with someone who truly listened. Or maybe it was the simple fact that she allowed herself to pause. She walked to the kitchen and poured herself a cup of warm tea. The steam rose gently, and she held the cup close to her hands as if it could protect her from the world outside. She didn't have a plan yet, but she knew she had to take things one step at a time. For now, just sitting with her thoughts felt like enough. When she stepped outside, cool air greeted her with a soft touch. The street was quiet, and the morning sun painted everything in soft gold. As she walked toward the local community center, she reminded herself that she didn't need to fix everything today. Just showing up was a victory. Inside the center, she found a group of familiar faces gathered in a circle. These were people who came together every week. It had been weeks since life first started, to feel a little lighter for the person, who had slowly been finding comfort in music. But life does not give anyone a smooth road for long. Just when they thought things were settling down, another wave of pressure rose in their life, stronger than anything they had faced before. It began with a sudden change at work. The company announced new goals, new expectations, and a faster pace. Everyone felt the impact, but it hit them especially hard. They had been trying so hard to stay balanced, and now the world was asking them to move even faster. Their hands would shake sometimes at their desk, not out of fear, but from the silent pressure building deep inside. Even when they tried to take a break, their mind raced with thoughts about unfinished tasks, upcoming meetings, and the fear of falling behind. One evening, after a long day, they sat on the edge of their bed, feeling as if their head was filled with heavy smoke. They were not sad, not angry, but simply tired in a way that felt bigger than the body. They reached for their phone and opened the same playlist that had helped them before. As soon as the first notes of a Beethoven piece began to play, the room felt different. The music was not light like Mozart or steady like Bach. Beethoven's sound was deeper, stronger, almost like a voice calling out from a place of struggle at first. They didn't understand why it touched them so much. But as the melody moved, something inside them started to open. The music carried both pain and strength together, like a storm that teaches someone how to stand. They lay back and closed their eyes, letting each sound come in waves. The music was bold, full of emotion, full of fire, and for some reason, it felt like it understood exactly what they were feeling. Over the next days, they kept returning to Beethoven, listening to the same pieces again and again. The emotions in the music made them feel less alone. It reminded them that even great people in history had faced hardship, had felt overwhelmed, had struggled with their own storms. Beethoven had written some of his most powerful music even when life had pushed him to his limits. That thought stayed with them. Work continued to grow more stressful. Some days, they would sit in their car before stepping inside the building, taking deep breaths while Beethoven's music played softly from their speakers. They could feel the pressure sitting on their shoulders, but the music helped them walk in anyway. It helped them keep going even when everything felt too much. One afternoon, after a long meeting filled with endless instructions and new demands, they went outside and sat on a bench near the office building. They felt drained, almost numb. They didn't want to talk to anyone. They didn't want to think. They put in their earphones and played another powerful piece. As the sound grew, their chest loosened a little. It felt like someone was telling them, through music, that it was okay to feel tired. It was okay to struggle. And it was okay to take a moment to breathe. Their relationship with others at work also began to shift. Several coworkers noticed how calm they stayed even on stressful days, and some even asked how they managed it. The person simply smiled and said they were learning to take small breaks and focus on one thing at a time. They didn't mention music directly, not because they wanted to hide it, but because the experience felt deeply personal. It wasn't just songs, it was something that held them together when they were close to breaking at home. Things were also becoming challenging. A family member was dealing with their own problems, and the atmosphere in the house felt heavy. There were more arguments than before, more silence, more tension. The person tried to help in any way they could, but the emotional weight often followed them around. Some nights they would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the world pressing down from all sides. During these nights, Beethoven's music became their companion. It didn't try to pretend everything was fine. Instead, it stood beside them, powerful and honest. The music had both sadness and courage, reminding them that feelings could be strong without breaking them. They would listen for an hour or more, letting the sound fill the room and wash over their thoughts. Slowly, they began to release their emotions in a healthy way. They stopped hiding their stress. When they felt overwhelmed, they stepped outside for a walk. When their chest felt tight, they closed their eyes and breathed deeper. When they needed a moment, they allowed themselves to take it. Beethoven taught them that strength was not silence. Strength was expression. One weekend, they decided to take a long walk in a nearby park. They placed their headphones on and let the music guide them. As they walked through the quiet path, the sky was covered with soft clouds. The air was cool but comforting. When a particularly moving part of the music played, they stopped walking and just stood still. It felt like the world around them paused for a moment. They felt their breath slow down. Their mind became clear. It was the kind of moment that stays with someone for years. During that walk, they realized something important. They didn't have to be perfect. They didn't have to keep everything together all the time. They didn't have to carry the entire weight of their life alone. The music helped them see that it was okay to feel deeply and still keep moving forward. The following weeks brought more challenges, but they handled them differently. When work was too heavy, they paused instead of panicking. When a family problem came up, they listened and responded with calm rather than stress. When their chest felt tight, they closed their eyes and played Beethoven softly. They weren't solving everything instantly. They were no longer drowning. One night after a particularly stressful day, they made a cup of warm tea and sat by the window. The city lights flickered outside, shining through the glass. They played one of Beethoven's gentler pieces, letting the soft but strong notes fill the space. As they sat there, they felt a sense of peace spreading through them. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, deep, comforting. They realized that music had not changed their situation, but it had changed the way they walked through it. It had taught them how to breathe through pain, how to stay steady in chaos, and how to find strength without being hard on themselves. Beethoven's music had become a bridge between their stress and their strength. It had become the sound of healing, and so they kept going, step by step, learning little by little, healing slowly but surely. They did not know what would come next, but they were ready to face it. The journey was not over yet, but for the first time in a long time, it felt strong enough to continue. It had been months since the first time music helped guide them through a storm. Life still had its ups and downs, but things no longer felt impossible. They had learned to breathe, to pause, to feel, and to move forward without falling apart. But now, they were entering a new chapter. One that would test everything they learned and shape the way they looked at the world forever. It started quietly, with a sense of restlessness they couldn't quite explain. They were not sad, not stressed, and not overwhelmed the way they once were. Instead, they felt something growing inside, something like a question waiting to be answered. It was as if life was gently tapping on their shoulder, telling them that it was time to step into something new. One evening, as they sat near the window with a cup of warm tea, they played a piece by Chopin. The soft, emotional melody wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Chopin's music was different from the strength of Beethoven or the calm order of Bach. It felt gentle but deep, full of feeling but never heavy. It touched the quiet parts inside them that they had forgotten about. As the music played, they felt a tear rise unexpectedly. Not because they were sad, but because they realized something important. They had been surviving for a long time, but now they wanted to live, truly live. Not just get through each day, but enjoy it, shape it, and make it their own. They sat there for a long time, letting the music unfold. The melody carried memories from the past, old fears, old struggles, old moments of doubt, but it also carried new feelings, hope, curiosity, and a soft excitement for the future. Over the next few days, they found themselves thinking more deeply about where they wanted their life to go. They wondered what made them feel alive, what gave them peace, and what brought them joy. For the first time in a long time, they weren't running from something, they were moving toward something. They began making small changes. They started waking up earlier just to enjoy the quiet morning before the world got loud. They began taking long walks without a destination, letting their mind wander while Chopin or Mozart played softly in their ears. These small moments helped them feel connected to themselves in a way they hadn't before. One afternoon, they visited a small community event at the library. A local group was hosting a music night, inviting anyone to come and listen or share their favorite pieces. They had never joined something like this before, but something inside them whispered, "Why not?" When they entered the room, they saw people of all ages gathered in a circle. Some were smiling, some were quiet, and some looked just as unsure as they felt. But the atmosphere was gentle and welcoming. The event began with a few people sharing stories about how music helped them through difficult times. One person talked about how Bach kept them calm during sleepless nights. Another spoke about how Mozart brought them confidence during tough decisions. As each person shared, something warm settled inside them. They were surrounded by people who understood. When it was their turn, they hesitated at first. But then they took a deep breath and spoke. "I used to think I had to carry everything alone," they said softly. "But music showed me that it's okay to feel, it's okay to rest, and it's okay to reach out. Beethoven helped me stay strong, Bach helped me stay steady, Mozart helped me breathe, and Chopin helped me find myself again." The room grew quiet, not in discomfort, but in connection. People listened with soft eyes, understanding exactly what the words meant. After the event, a few people came up to them to say thank you. Some shared their own small stories. Others simply said they related. In that moment, they realized something powerful. They were no longer just someone being carried by music. They had become someone who could inspire others. In the following weeks, they kept attending the music nights. They started helping organize the chairs, greeting new people, and even recommending pieces that had helped them during tough moments. The group became a small family, a place where people could find comfort and connection. Outside of the group, life continued to move forward. Work became more manageable because they no longer carried it like a burden. Family issues still existed, but they approached them with patience rather than fear. The world hadn't changed, but they hadn't. That made all the difference one weekend. They decided to take a trip alone for the first time in years. Nothing dramatic, just a short visit to a nearby town with a peaceful lake and a quiet cafe. They took a small bag, their headphones, and a notebook. Wanting to spend time away from familiar noise, when they arrived at the lake, the water shimmered under the soft sunlight. They sat on a bench near the edge and played a gentle Chopin piece. The melody mixed with the soft sound of the wind. It felt like the world was speaking to them in a language only the heart could understand. They opened their notebook and began writing, not about stress, not about problems, but about dreams. Small dreams, big dreams, uncertain dreams. They wrote about wanting peace, wanting purpose, wanting to share moments with people who understood them. They wrote about the future not with fear, but with quiet excitement. When they closed the notebook, they let out a deep breath. It felt like the breath of someone who had finally made peace with themselves. On the way back home, they listened to a new list of classical pieces. Each one brought color into their thoughts. They realized that music had not only healed their stress and guided them through hardship. It had also opened the door to a new version of themselves, one filled with curiosity and softness. By the time they reached home, they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. They belonged in their life. They belonged in their choices. They belonged in the world. That night, they sat by the window again, just as they had months earlier. They played Mozart gently in the background and looked out at the quiet street. Their life was not perfect. It never would be. But they were no longer frightened of imperfection. They were no longer overwhelmed by the unknown. They whispered softly, "I'm ready for what comes next." And they meant it. The journey they had taken from stress, confusion, and emotional exhaustion to peace, strength, and self-awareness had shaped them in ways they never expected. Music had been more than sound. It had been a friend, a guide, a mirror, a safe place. As they closed their eyes and let the soft melody fill the room, they felt grateful. Grateful for the pain they survived. Grateful for the strength they discovered. Grateful for the music that never once left their side. This was not an ending. This was the beginning. A new chapter, one they were finally ready to live.